Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening to the Quality Hub, Chatting with ISO Experts. I'm your host, Xavier Francis, and today I'm here with two very special guests, Kevin Franklin, Chief Product Officer at LRQA, and Scott Dawson, President of Core Business Solutions. We're going to continue our discussion from last week on AI risk and what comes next, understanding ISO 42001. So, Kevin, we've talked about it a little bit before, but what is the role of ISO 42001 in building trust in AI? I mean, there are so many times, I'm sure everybody who's used AI and listening to this podcast has had AI fail them at some point, whether it was misinformation, whether it was hallucinating, whether it gave you something that you didn't ask for because you didn't prompt it correctly. How can 42001 help build trust in using AI? Because that's one of the things you want from your standard, not just to keep you safe from any potential problems, not guide you in the best ethical ways to do it, but how can you trust it?
Yeah, very important question. And, I think you're right. AI is a very exciting next chapter of the human experience.
Yeah.
And we're using AI today for automatic decision making. We're using it to crunch massive amounts of data, for learning, for designing systems, for answering questions, for really making recommendations. There's so many different things that we're using AI for diagnosis, as we discussed before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, ultimately, when we look at 42001, and it's a really great question because there's still a big black box around AI.
Yeah.
When we use it for all the things we just discussed, we're still not really sure how it works. We've all read about large language models, we've all read about the different systems and how they work, but we still don't really know and understand. And 42000 will help to explain some of these models,
Okay.
help to dismantle that black box to a degree. And that black box is at risk of breeding distrust.
Yes.
And 42001 will help reverse exactly that challenge.
Okay.
In addition to opening up the black box, it will also better embed accountability around the use of AI in an organization.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We've also discussed where people might be tempted to use AI because it can be something that drives efficiencies, but they use it irresponsibly, maybe not intentionally, but
Mm-hmm.
unintentionally. And 42001 will help to remove that concern by making people more accountable for how and when they deploy AI, and also what they use it for and where they supplement it with human intelligence
Mm-hmm.
in decision-making processes and applications. So those are two really important parts of the standard that will help us get more trust in how we use AI.
Right.
I think thirdly, 42001 also requires for us to really engage multiple stakeholders as part of the 42001 process. So this will give us more confidence around, how we look at and deploy that management system within the organization, that it was designed in a way that represented the needs and interests of the business itself,
Right.
as well as its clients, customers, regulators, and employees.
Right. So let's say we have a customer now that's ready to consider getting certified to ISO 42001. What do you find are some of the common misconceptions about that implementation?
Yeah, good question. And I'm sure we're going to get this asked a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe if I can just identify two. So firstly, the biggest misconception is that it is only for AI developers, those large, big tech firms.
Right.
But as we've discussed already, it's just as relevant for the consumers and users of AI. Small businesses, medium-sized businesses, other large businesses that could be using AI tools and are basically clients in AI, applying it, training it, deploying it across their own systems and data to drive efficiency within their organization and enhanced experience for their clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those businesses also need to be looking at 42001. So that's misconception number one. It's not just for the developers and builders, but also for the users.
Anybody can use it.
Correct. The whole supply chain really around AI.
Mm-hmm.
The second big one is that 42001 is expensive to implement. In reality, this is not a big expensive exercise like a lot of the other management system standards, 9001,
Mm-hmm.
14001. 42001 implementation is also not prohibitively expensive
Right.
from a certification perspective, from a training perspective, or an internal application perspective. In fact, actually, it could end up saving you money. It will give you early wins in generating a standardized way of managing AI within the business. And the return on investment by doing this versus actually having some medium term failures, regulatory fines,
Oh my goodness.
or blowback from customers means it's something that should be considered seriously, particularly at this point in time where AI is scaling so fast, but this black box we discussed is still very much an open question that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I think back of 27001 where it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know and where your dangers are. This, you're literally, at least at that point in 27001 and dealing with information security, you're trying to keep somebody out or you're trying to keep something from leaking out. Here, you could potentially be handing it over to something, information that shouldn't be. So it's really, really important that you're dealing with making sure you're not putting yourself at that big of a risk where you do hit those fines and failures if you accidentally leak personal information or something like that. Scott, what do you find are some of the most common misconceptions about ISO 42001 implementation, primarily from a small business standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's yet another ISO standard.
Mm-hmm.
And when small businesses hear that there's another standard, maybe another certification, they're immediately thinking it's something that's complicated, that's going to be difficult to implement, that's beyond our ability to pursue. Maybe they see it as it's not relevant, it's more for bigger companies.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very scalable, it's very adaptable to the context that you're in. And just because you start to work with 42001 doesn't necessarily mean you need to head for certification immediately.
Right, right.
I mean, you need to think about it as a process and a journey. And there may be a point when certification adds benefit, and LRQA certainly provides certification services that can be helpful to get a company certified. But I would say look at using the goals of being responsible and mitigating risk as your target, not certification as your target.
Right.
That's oftentimes you let the badge be the award for the race that you run. Well, just enjoying the race that you run and doing a better job and doing your best on running a race has its own benefit.
Yeah.
And the award that you get, just reflects a point in time. And that's really how you think about it, any standard that's related to ISO.
Yeah.
But I think a small business needs to take it a step at a time. Start with get a copy of the standard and read it through.
Right.
And then choose the areas that seem most similar to what you're already doing. If you're ISO 9001 certified or ISO 27001 certified, there's a lot of things that are common that you can just kind of bolt on or expand some of the AI thought processes and procedures and processes and begin to walk the walk.
Right, right.
And I think as you do that, you'll get more comfortable with what it means to understand these risks and take appropriate action within a management system.
Yep, absolutely. I know we've talked about on the podcast certification versus compliance, and this might be the step where here in the States, why would you become certified if no one's checking up on you sometimes? It almost feels like that a little bit. But this is one of those ones where at least getting compliant to it, putting those best practices of AI, if you will, in place is a really smart move. So don't take too long to look for it.
Well, that being said, X, I think this is an opportunity for competitive advantage.
Yeah, yeah.
Not only in what you do and how you do it, but in demonstrating your commitment to responsible use of AI.
Great point.
And so within the context of your business environment, in the context of the customers that you serve, it might make a huge difference in a customer's decision on who they're going to trust.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially if you're handling particularly sensitive information.
Yeah, yeah.
Or proprietary information. Or your output of your business is information.
Good point. Good point.
I think you want to be looking closely at this standard and possibly certification to really validate that you are a company that can be trusted with this technology.
Absolutely.
Well said, Scott. I mean, not just a huge difference, but all the difference. I mean, two businesses stood next to each other with exactly the same services, leveraging AI. One of them has 42,001. Therefore, a stamp to say that it's using it effectively and responsibly. Which do you pick? Clearly,
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
you're going to pick the second one, right? With
Yeah.
42,001.
Yep, I agree with
Quick question on that. Do you find it 42,001 is easily to implement into an IMS like others have been? We see a lot, the 9,001, 14,001 together, 9,001, 45,001, 9,001, 27,001. Is 42,001 pretty easy to set up as an IMS as well?
In principle, yes. In that the underlying structure of the framework is very similar to the other standards that you've just mentioned. So in principle, yes. What I would say is that 42,001 is a little newer in the market. So the specifics that apply to AI are things that there are not necessarily as many auditors, certifiers, or qualified experts available to support the embedding of or the implementation of. But in principle, yes, if you've got the right people to support you through that process, then 100%.
Okay. You can do all the due diligence, but we got to find someone who can actually certify you to it right now. That's really a key point there. So Kevin, what are you looking at when businesses have said, okay, we're considering 42,001. Where do we start?
Very important question. Firstly, get hold of the standard, read it, learn about it, and think about it. As part of that, I guess information gathering. By the way, you may even go to an AI generative tool, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Perplexity, Claude, and ask it the questions. What's in 42,001? Is it relevant for my business, right? So do some of that initial discovery work for sure. That's absolutely critical. Learn about it and its application to your business. I think with that, you're starting to think about what kind of business advantage we could get by deploying this, because there should be a business case really for the deployment. Secondly, I would say training. Training is a great place to start with these sorts of things, new standards, new tools. Going through kind of a structured way of looking at this with people that know and understand it and have the technical expertise to support that, really important. So introduction to 42,001 training, auditor or lead auditor training, depending on the size of your business. Actually, you may even be in that internal audit function doing this within your own organization. So training is a really important step here. Brings a good structure, logic, and a sort of systems thinking into the potential rollout of this within your organization. Then I would say, thirdly, is the option for doing a more comprehensive or light touch AI risk assessment to understand where and what sorts of exposures you may have in your organization today.
Okay.
Whether it's building your own models or whether it's actually using third-party AI tools, getting some of that insight and thinking about actually the risks, not just to your own business, but also to your customers and other key stakeholders, that will help you think about your 42,001 deployment and roadmap a little bit more effectively and sequentially. Then I would say, obviously, if you're going to move forward to thinking about a certification, this is a point where you need to start getting the right level of executive sponsorship in the business by putting together that business case for 42,001 as a strategic enabler of both innovation, risk management, competitive advantage, etc., and not just a compliance checkbox. There should be return on investment linked to the rollout of this standard.
Right.
And then you could either, depending on the size of your business, roll it out for either a high impact but manageable use case within your organization, or actually it may be that your business is one use case and you're deploying it for the whole organization. So it just really depends on the scale and size of the business. But those would be the kind of 5 key steps, I would say, for starting. Even if you just do step 1 and 2, which is really learning about it, understanding it, and then going through the training and standardizing your thinking about it so that you can move into the risk assessment and governance, that would be a really great way to start.
So, real big final question here before I get your final thoughts. Why does this matter now? We talked about it a little bit. It's coming at us hard and fast. Best to get on top of it, but why does 42,001 matter now?
From my viewpoint, we're at a tipping point for humanity around the transition to AI and the use of it, but also a tipping point for AI itself. and how it's going to be deployed by businesses, by people in different sectors and in different countries and regions.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many new tools being developed all of the time, every day. There's so much to keep up with. Increasingly, we're at a point where effective governance of AI is what's going to separate the winners from the casualties or the losers, right?
Yeah.
There's so many new models, so many new updates. There's so much competition there. Actually, what becomes more and more relevant is how well you as a business are using and deploying it, governing it, and communicating that internally and to your stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
And ignoring that governance puts you at risk of a really potentially catastrophic failure.
Yeah.
That could have a huge reputational, monetary impact on your business, destroying brand, equity, and market position.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's point one. Like, governance is more relevant now than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
Point two, if we don't get this right, like ethical debt, right? This is a real thing that we'll start to talk about moving forward. And it's nowhere more relevant than in the deployment of AI, right? The models and tools and how businesses deploy AI could lead to ethical debt, not just tech debt, which is a term that a lot of people are very familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That will be very hard for companies to dig themselves out of if they get inadvertently in a hole that's too deep. And this is very possible with AI because things are scaling so quickly, information, communication, scaling so fast that we need to make sure we never incur any ethical debt and we stay in front of this dilemma from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now more than ever, 42001 is relevant. It's not just about avoiding risk and about avoiding kind of ethical debt and about getting in front of the governance landscape, but it's also about being able to effectively, safely seize the massive opportunities and be at the front end of the AI revolution in a responsible and efficient way that supports your deep, long-term trust building with your clients and regulators.
Well said. Scott, clearly Kevin's talked a lot about why it's so important right now. He talked a little bit about how it could destroy your brand and market position. Small business, it could destroy your business. You could bite off a problem that's bigger than you can handle. Why else might it be important to a small business?
Well, the deniers are not right.
Yeah.
It is here. The AI revolution has already begun. And even if you potentially as a small business owner, maybe these exploratory endeavors are not your thing. Maybe you're not on a computer all day long. Maybe you don't see AI as relevant to what you're doing. I guarantee your employees are using AI in some manner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're probably using it in the course of their work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can say, well, we don't want anyone using AI. Well, that'd be kind of like saying we don't want anyone using their cell phone or the internet.
Yeah, yeah.
It is here. It is part of our lives. But at the same time, it's evolving so quickly. I was watching a show last evening about the newest Google glasses that have AI built into them. So you can just walk around with AI basically plastered on your face. And you don't have to have a keyboard, a computer, or anything
Right.
to be able to tap into the web of AI information and utilize those kinds of technologies without anyone being aware that you're doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
So just it's starting to weave its way into our lives in new, exciting, and somewhat scary ways that are very easy to use. They're very easy to access,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also very easy to do something that can cause harm to an employee and their lives, could cause harm to your business, could cause harm to your customers, could cause harm to your success as an organization. And so it's just, you've got to be aware that it is here now. And as Kevin has said, getting ahead of it, getting an approach to managing this risk in place now, even if AI is not your thing,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean it's not your thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a thing that is in your business, in your life, whether you're personally engaged or knowingly, I'll say it that way, you're knowingly personally engaged in use of AI. Do a Google search and you just used AI.
Exactly. I was going to say that. That's absolutely true.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's here, and I think just building that awareness, building that understanding, and using a tool like ISO 42001 to help you plan the right way to implement these kinds of technologies in your context is as responsible as putting safety programs in place before someone is hurt.
Yeah.
Or put quality programs in place before you lose a big customer.
Mm-hmm.
These are just analogies, right? But you want to take action before it becomes a major problem that you're trying to put back together and repair your reputation, as Kevin was referring to earlier. But just because you don't know how it's being used doesn't mean it doesn't impact you. And as a business owner, and I hope there are many business owners listening to us, it's time to start educating yourself and your employees about what the proper way, the safe way, the responsible way is to use these tools, and have it be an open dialogue within your organization. That's the only way that people will learn what to do and what guardrails they should be following in using these tools.
Hey, everybody, the genie is out of the bottle. It's not going back in.
That's right.
Just go with it. This has been really great. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this, talking about AI and 42001. Any last thoughts, Kevin?
Maybe a very short, but hopefully provocative last thought. We've spoken a lot about how AI is ubiquitous everywhere and inevitable. What we haven't really acknowledged is that AI, it's not just there everywhere and being used, but it's also shaping our reality itself. When we use AI, ask it questions, and it answers them, and we believe them. When we make business decisions based on AI insights, it is shaping the reality that we perceive and that we experience every day. Now, in the context where AI is actually shaping and co-creating this reality with us, don't we want to know that it is being effectively governed?
Yeah.
When it's doing that. So governance isn't a bureaucratic hurdle. It's ultimately a central part of co-creating a future together with AI. We're doing that already, by the way. That allows us to move from what is a very risky experiment that's a genie out of the bottle, an experiment that's already out of the bottle, into a space where we can use AI to generate sustained competitive advantage for our business and for our clients.
Absolutely. Scott, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I'd just leave one message here. You don't need to be a tech expert to start governing your AI. You don't need to understand the intricacies of how the technology is working and how the large language models are assimilating information and packaging it and utilizing information, including your own, if you allow that. But you don't need to understand all the intricacies, but you do need to understand that AI is affecting our lives, it's affecting our business, and it's the responsible thing to do in running your business to manage this, just like you manage other processes, other risks, other aspects of your business. It's now one more thing that is vitally important that you get ahead of. And I think ISO 42001 does a great job for beginners who don't feel like they understand all of this mumbo jumbo.
Right.
You don't have to understand it all to begin to get yourself educated and begin to put proper controls in place for that protection. So don't think you have to be an expert to begin.
Yeah, absolutely. I really want to thank both of you guys for being here. This has been a really eye-opening look at AI and 42001, and really, really, really a great episode for everybody to listen to. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, X. Really enjoyed it very much and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great to be here, X and Kevin. Great to have this conversation.
We want to thank everyone who's listened to our podcast today. We hope it's been informative for you. Now, if you're looking for more information about how Core Business Solutions, now that we are an LRQA company, and how we can help you with ISO certification, cybersecurity, 42001, or even customized training, please email us at info@thecoresolution.com. You can also visit our website at www.thecoresolution.com. And if you haven't already followed us on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube, please be sure to do so, and that way you won't miss the next Quality Hub podcast when it's released next week. Have a great day, everyone.